This is a 1970s era, possibly before, Seth Thomas Cottage Clock. This is the movement. The entire movement is pinned together with taper pins. And even though the label inside here says, Thomaston, Connecticut, the movement itself says Plymouth, Connecticut, which means that the movement was made, or at least the plates were made, prior to that label. This is one of the early Seth Thomas clocks, because the early ones were said to be made and were labeled and to be from Plymouth Hollow, Connecticut. Well, this does not say Plymouth Hollow, it just says Plymouth, Connecticut, which is interesting. I just don't know what to think of that. I'm going to do a little research on it, but I have a feeling this is one of the early ones. The ones that you can prove Seth Thomas himself made, those are the rare ones, and those are expensive. But the fact that this was made in Plymouth, which actually was Plymouth Hollow, prior to it being named Thomaston after Seth Thomas, those are the early movements. And like I said, these are all pinned together with taper pins. And they look to be original taper pins. I don't know that this movement has ever been apart. Very interesting. The only real slop in this, and it's quite bad, is up here in the escape wheel. And you can see there's quite a bit of slop in that. Other than that, all the pivots seem to be pretty sound. So, wow, I'm really excited about this. Thank you, my Sharon Jane, for buying this for me. A very thoughtful gift. I'm going to get upstairs right now and tell her that what I found on this, that it says Plymouth, Connecticut, because that marks this as one of the early Seth Thomas pieces, which usually the early ones were made and I'm going to research it, like I said, in the 1860s, not the 1870s. Once everything went to Thomaston, Connecticut, the town had been renamed, then you're definitely into the 70s. So, all right, that's it. Okay, so here is what 150 years of aging and patina and dirt and so forth looks like. And then we begin to clean. And this is what it looks like after you clean it. And quite a dramatic change. You see it a lot right here between this side and the front. And I got a lot of work left to do. But anyway, yeah, it cleans up very nicely. I don't know what this wood is. The early case clocks, or the early cases for the clocks, I think were in mahogany, but I could be wrong, and this doesn't look like mahogany to me. So it's going to be interesting. I got to figure out what kind of wood this is. Anyway, I think it's going to be really beautiful, especially after it's completely clean and then waxed and buffed. But look at the difference in the age. This is what 150 years looks like right here. So now we're going to keep on going here, and I'm just taking Murphy's oil soap, and I'm not the only one to do this. I've been told by someone else, I don't know, it's John Tope, I believe, that runs the class I'm taking, that this is how you do it. And I'm seeing more cred on this, even though I've already done this like 3 different times. I'm just going to keep going here. I'm going to start working on this area too. I'll show you how much crud comes off. Okay, let's get some paper towel, fresh batch. This is on the surface. It's already been cleaned twice, and you can see how much crud came off. This is now the third time that that's been cleaned, but this is the first time on this side. Look at that. That is really 156 years of crud coming off. And yeah, it's surprising how much and after all this is thoroughly cleaned, it will get waxed. And I have some really good quality Varathane finishing paste, finishing wax. And anyway, that's what we're doing. Welcome back to Old Timers. We're looking at an approximately 1865 Seth Thomas movement. There's nothing wrong with this movement, and I'm doing a no-no. I am cleaning the movement as a whole, debating whether or not I'm even going to take it to pieces, because as you see right here, see if you can see it through the this is the cleaning fluid in it. This old clock is put together with the pins, and I'm guessing that it probably has never been apart. And I'm really reluctant to go taking apart an old one like this. And by the way, any of you guys that work on clocks, you know that I'm probably being foolish, but it's a lovely, lovely old clock. And I already did a segment on the cleaning and waxing of the case, and here it is. From 1865. This is what's called a cottage clock, and it is just a thing of beauty. Just really lovely wood and nicely done. And so I'm going to let this clean for a little while longer, and I'm going to take it out and scrub it with a toothbrush and toothpick and clean out everything I can. I'm debating whether or not to take it to pieces, and it's primarily because of its age. Like I said, I'm probably going to get spit upon for saying that. But once everything's clean, I'll probably just get everything as spick and span as I can, and then put some lubrication on it, and put it back in the clock. This thing runs like a top without any help whatsoever. As a matter of fact, until the mainspring wound down, I had to, I guess a little piece of wood fell out. I had a piece of wood in there to block the, I forgot the name of it now, the extension arm that controls the pendulum, the crutch. And to block it, because, it would just go and go and go and go, And so I'm kind of glad it is wound down. And once I get this out and cleaned, I'm going to rinse it in very hot water, and then after I rinse it in hot water, it's going into denatured alcohol, and rinse for a while longer, and then once it's out of the denatured alcohol, we'll dry it and see where it's at, kind of see where it's at from that point, and possibly just lubricate it and put it back in the clock. I would love for this thing to just be able to continue running. You stop and think about how long this little baby's been around. This is one of the very, very old. Oh, by the way, the reason we're talking about it being an early one, I don't know if you can see the stamp on this or not. It's right there. And it says Plymouth, Connecticut. In other words, it was stamped as a movement before Plymouth, Connecticut, or Plymouth Hollow, Connecticut, was, they turned the name to Thomaston in honor of Seth Thomas. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with. I'm going to move on here. This is just about done cleaning. I'm going to get it upstairs, rinse it off in very, very hot water, and then get it into its alcohol bath, and we'll move on from there. Paid off. This clock, I just did a calculation on it, is about 156 years old, if I'm correct. And as soon as I got all the repairs made and got the springs re-lubricated after cleaning, fantastic. It just took off, and it's been going great. It's been keeping time. I'll tell you what, Seth Thomas knew how to build them in the day. So this is Seth Thomas Cottage Clock from about 1865, 67, somewhere in there, right around the time just before they renamed the town Thomaston. So anyway, love it. My wife gave this to me as a gift after I started working on clocks. I just now bought this Waterbury clock, gingerbread clock, for $75. It was at $95, but the daughter of the man who owns it, and it was in the antique mall, immediately lowered it down to $75. And I brought it home, put the pendulum on it, kind of got it situated so it's in a good place, and just started the pendulum. And it ain't perfect, but I'll tell you right now, it's running. There's power in that mainspring, and without doing a thing to it, it's up and running. So, you know, this is a good purchase for $75. I can turn this around and do quite a bit of work on it, I'm sure. Probably several bushings and so forth. And then turn around and sell it. And I really like that. You know, this is a first gingerbread, especially gingerbread with the what do they call it? Reverse stenciling on the back of the glass like that. Very, very nice. Very pretty. And I'm looking forward to putting this sweet old girl in shape. Very, very dusty. It's been up on top of a cabinet in the antique mall for about 2 years, doing nothing. And I think the pendulum's stopping, and that's fine. I mean, if it wants to stop, that's the way it is. Who knows how I'm going to do some research on how old this is. Obviously, I did as much as I expected to, and that's just, put the pendulum on, set it swinging, and sure enough, it's going. So last night I glued up the frame of this Waterbury clock, my gingerbread. This was I was working on it, trying to clean the outside of the glass. You're looking at the backside, obviously, from the hinges here. But anyway, when I was trying to clean it, the frame literally fell to pieces in two pieces, with this piece and then this piece separately. And the glass fell out. It didn't break. I'm so grateful. You can't replace one of these. So anyway, I was able to go ahead and very carefully glue these corners, which are kind of, it's crazy the system that they have, but it's a mortise and tenon type of thing. And by stages, I glued this frame all back together. And I also, while I had the glass out, cleaned it thoroughly. I used just one little piece of steel wool and some mineral spirits to go all around the edges on the outside. I did not do that on the inside. On the inside, I just took some Windex and carefully worked around the stencil here, and that's of gold paint. I guess it has to be. And anyway, just very, very carefully worked all the way around it. And it's done, and I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the clamps. I think we're good. It's been glued overnight, and this glue is supposed to set and be good to go in 20 minutes. So, all right, I'll show you when we're all done. Okay, so it's all out. Everything is clamped up very nicely and glued up. The thing that's kind of interesting about it is this was done in about 1911. And that being said, all these corners, everything was glued with hide glue. And by the way, that's very, very old method. I mean, Stradivari was using hide glue for his violins back in the late 1600s, early 1700s. I'm not surprised. Hide glue is cheap, and it was something that could easily be administered when you're putting a frame together. I put it together with something a bit stronger. I used some tight bond. And anyway, yeah, it won't come apart, and we're good to go. So I've done a fairly decent job of flattening this part of the hinge by using my little anvil. I bought this for the sake of doing all my clockwork. I'll explain it another time. Most of you guys know what that's all about anyway. But I tell you what, it's very, very handy to have that nice solid hunk of steel. And you can see it's not perfect, but for the most part, there's no curve left to it. It's nice and flat, and I've got most of the dimple out of that. So when the screws go back, they should go back nice and tight. So anyway, all right, that's one little job done. I'm going to continue cleaning that up, probably lubricate these just a little bit, and put them back. Okay, so the door to the clock was held on by these tiny, tiny screws. Now, the screws going into the actual clock face, or the clock housing, are longer, but these tiny screws are what hold the hinge on. And the hole to where one of the screws goes in was very much stripped. And so what I've done, I've gone ahead and carved a little plug, cleaned the hole out, blew it out so there's hopefully no more rust in there, and glued that into place. And now what I'm doing is cutting that off flush. I've got a very sharp knife. I'm going to be cutting that off flush, and then re-drilling that hole so that when that baby screw goes in there, it's going to hold. Unlike what it was doing before, because you really need all four of your screws to hold pretty tight, so that the doors, it opens and shuts many times over the years. It has a nice firm hinge system on it. And up here, this one is very solid. All the screws on that are just in there very tightly. You can see that they kind of in at an awkward angle, but they are in tight. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting this off, and then I'll re-drill that hole and get this little tiny screw back home where it belongs. So that's the next little project. Okay, so that, my friends, worked like a charm. Let's see if I can show you. And I didn't use a drill for this at all to drill the hole. What I did, I just put a needle down in there and reamed it. I'm not going to push it any further because right now it's almost down to the level. Oh, hang on. You're not even seeing this, are you? Okay. This is almost down to the level where it's going to be hitting the hinge. So anyway, yeah, it's got a good grip. It went in just with no problem. Like I said, I used a needle. That way I could absolutely pinpoint it, no pun intended, for the center of the hole. And then I just put the screw in, and I started, with a screwdriver putting it down, and there you go. So that was worth it. It's a little extra effort, but now I know I've got two good solid screws going in that are going to be holding this hinge in place for the door to be opening and closing. Well, guys, I hate to say it, but after all the work I did to plug those holes and make new screw holes for those tiny screws, all four of these on the actual clock case are going to have to be done too. They're just too stripped out. So I'm going to have to just back up, take the door off, and just redo every one of these holes. Just plug every one and reset them. And these are much longer screws, which means I've got to be more careful in terms of drilling down in there. I can't just use a needle. I'm going to have to get some depth to it. So Okay, well, there it is. But I'm not going to do it tonight. Well, I've carved 4 little plugs, screw plugs, to go into the holes, and we'll get these glued up and let it sit overnight. Tomorrow morning we'll cut them off and hopefully get all 4 of these larger screws. Here they are, larger screws put back in. I'm going to clean them up a little bit. They're a little bit rusty looking. So anyway, now right now I'm going to clean out the hole with that 1/4 inch drill bit. Clean out each one of these holes a little bit and blow them out, just to get the dust up out of there. And then when everything glues up, it'll be nice and clean, fresh hole for the glue to take hold. Sadly, all the work that I did on my little Seth Thomas over here, my little cottage clock, not cabin clock, it has not worked out. I took the movement out, completely cleaned it, and dried it and re-oiled it and so forth. I did not take it to pieces, which I've already explained, and put everything back together, and then I let it run for 2 or 3 days. The problem with it is that it consistently loses time. Just it's sad. And what that means is ultimately I'm going to have to go ahead and take apart the movement. I'm going to have to take the movement out, disassemble it, redo everything, and see if we can figure out what the problem is. But it is badly losing time. On the other hand, let me go ahead and just shift focus here. This is a Waterbury clock, a Waterbury movement, Waterbury Clock Company, and it's a wonderful old gingerbread clock. I forgot the name of it right now. There's a name for this. Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. But with this, I didn't clean it. I didn't do nothing to this. This was up on top, on the very top shelf, in the antique mall down here for a couple of years at least, and it just sat there. Just sat there. Nobody looked at it. Nobody paid any attention. We happened to be there one day when the daughter of the man who ran that particular antique booth was there, and she cut us a deal on this thing. And when I got it, the door, and I've got to be including that in this video, the door frame had come it fell apart, and that glorious glass fell out on the floor. Thankfully, it did not break. And so I used to make picture frames, so I very carefully rebuilt the frame, and had to redo all the hinges on it, by the way, because the hinges, the holes are stripped out. And so I had to re-plug all the holes where the screws for the hinges went in and reset everything, basically. I did nothing to the movement itself. I did have to steal the pendulum rod off from another clock that I have, because the rod to this one was stripped, the threading on it, and I could not get the thing, the bob, to be high enough to be able to regulate this thing and get it up to where I needed, and get it to be keeping time. Once I traded out the rod and raised that the bob up about 1/2 inch actually, because it was losing time a little bit, this thing has been amazingly accurate. Every time it strikes, and by the way, it strikes on the half and on the hour. Every time it strikes, I look over at the clock. Oh my goodness, it's just perfection. I'm not going to do anything to this until it starts misfiring and not keeping time. I'm keeping it. You'll notice I've got it shemmed over on the left-hand side of the clock there as you're looking at it, just to get everything to level out and be nice, even tick-tock. But I'm just loving this thing. I haven't even cleaned it. One of these days, I'm gonna, let it run down, take the pendulum off, and do a complete cleaning. The door, the door frame and the glass have all been cleaned because I redid those. But I wanted to go ahead and do all the gingerbread and the base, and just a really lovely, lovely clock. You know, say what you want to about gingerbread. Yeah, they're flashy, but I love this old Waterbury movement. It is just glorious, and it is keeping time like you would not believe. You see, there's no fast or slow on it. You just got to get that right there, and that's, you know, once I replaced the rod and had the screw to be able to adjust the height on it, I just happened to hit it right. I raised it about a half an inch, and boy, I mean, it's just right on the button all the time. And yeah, I'm loving it, loving it, loving it. This is so cool. Anyway, that's the tale of two clocks, and one very much older. The other one's about 1865, something like that. This is probably 1920s. But like I said, lovely old Waterbury movement in a wonderful old gingerbread clock.